Welcome, everyone. I'm Holly Corbett, VP of Content here at Consciously Unbiased, a movement to build inclusion in the workplace. And I'm very excited for our guest today, Karen Eldad. She is an executive coach who has worked with Olympic athletes, supermodels, special forces operatives, Hollywood stars, and executives at companies such as JP Morgan Chase, Estee Lauder, and Nike. She's known as Coach Karen, and she just published a must read book for all the overachievers in the crowd. It just made the number one new release on Amazon last week, and it's called GILDED, Breaking Free from the Cage of Ambition, Perfectionism, and the Relentless Pursuit of More. Our producer, Lila, will drop a link to the book in the comments. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Holly. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. We're going to have such a great talk. And for those who are not identifying as overachievers, stick around. Don't worry, this is for you too.
Yeah, Karen, I am reading your book. I'm loving it. And what I really love about it is that you include your personal stories in with all of the leadership tips. So it's really clear that you have done the strategies. You know they worked because they worked for you. And I guess I'd just like to start out asking you, what motivated you to write this book?
After many years of attempting to write a book that would just sell well, Holly, and glorify my name, as so many people do, no shame, whatevs, I ended up deciding to write a book that would serve my clients. I wanted them to have one book that would take them from A to Z, accompanying my program, essentially encapsulating the method, but that also spoke directly to an underserved, and no, I'm not saying this ironically, an underserved segment of society, which is the overachiever. The overachiever, I'd like to define for a second, is only 8% of the population, just technically speaking, the person who has achieved above and beyond success according to the academic nomenclature. However, the way I define overachiever is a person who is intensely focused and hyper vigilant in terms of overwork or overproductivity. That can apply well outside of your career. We all know a physical obsessive. We all know a mommy obsessive. We all know people who are just spending a little too much time on their health and their food and on many, many dimensions well outside the career, right? And so anyone who's wired to be hyper intensively focused and a little bit obsessive in any category will identify with this string of people. And I wanted a book that would serve just them. And the reason I did that was because first, it's been my experience too. Like for many years, I've read pretty much, you can see my library, just so you know, those are all personal development books, every single one of them. There is not a single work of fiction, maybe unless you consider Dante's Divine Comedy, a work of literary fiction, which I do not. There's not a single book there, and all of them are designed a certain way for a certain trajectory, and none of them really serve the overachiever or the intensely focused person who first needs to become balanced and brought down to earth so that they stop intellectually trying to absorb ideas and they start breaking open, because that's the only way they will emotionally start to digest the lessons and really come through that tunnel. I wrote this primarily for the former version of me and for the client. And I thought that there was a gap that needed to be filled, and looks like I'm right.
So you're saying an overachiever is someone that is hyper focused on another area outside of themselves, like whether it's their body, it's their career, it's their status as a parent or a partner. And I in the book there was a line that struck me. You said, "My quest for achievement and outward success has caused me to abandon my true self for years. I was caught in a trap of my own making." And that so resonated with me because I think we've all been there where we've been focusing on something that really isn't what brings us true happiness, but then you feel like you can't get out of it, right? So what advice do you have for others? Like what got you to that point where you had that realization where you're like, oh, I need to get out of this. And then once you had it, you actually figured out a way to get out of it on your own.
Well, first, I really hope that everybody who's watching this is resonating, because this is a very common experience. We box ourselves into a corner in life. Otherwise, by the way, the midlife crisis wouldn't be such a common experience, a universal experience. That's also the reason there is a golden cage on the cover of the book. It's literally gilded cage is the analogy. It's the reigning analogy of the book. I think there are two ways that this is going to start to rattle you. The first is what happened to me, which is trauma. Trauma is when you start to understand that all of the things are quote unquote taken away from you, the job, the status, the marriage, everything starts to collapse. You have to contend with the fact that you have been very over reliant on external achievements for a very long time, and they have abandoned you. They have not served their purpose. They have not been the security blanket that you fought so hard to preserve. And the second is actually in the opposite spectrum of emotions. Well, it's not really, it's actually the same spectrum of emotions, it just feels very different, because the first will come with radical sadness, uh, grief, anger, all of that gamut. The other way that it will occur to you that you've boxed yourself into a corner by becoming very over reliant on chasing external factors is aimlessness, boredom, restlessness, just this weird, is this all there is feeling, this complete hum, background hum all the time. Very, very common. And in both cases, I recommend with all my heart, do not ignore the feelings, go inward. The inner journey is the only thing that's going to get you out the other side, and don't ignore the feelings.
So you're saying even if you have achieved the promotion or, the partner that you wanted or whatever it is that's external, if you have that sense of aimlessness or that sense like there is something more, that is a signal to you. Don't ignore it. It's a
Yes,
signal that you need to go inward and figure out, what am I really supposed to
yes.
be doing?
It's a sign
Because
that something is wrong. It's 100%. Like, there are a lot of people who told me, I remember back in the day, it's fine, you're just having a, a moment of ego
mm,
around a situation. No, it's not. Success is supposed to feel good to you. Marriage is
right.
supposed to feel wonderful to you. You and I are in our second long partnership. You know this. You
Yeah.
know this. Career is supposed to wake up. You are supposed to wake up eager for the day. Most days, not every day, but most days, it's supposed to feel good to you. And if it doesn't feel good to you in either side of the spectrum, something is wrong. And that something is not the thing. It's not the partner. I mean, in my
Mhm.
case, definitely was the partner, but I'm the only exception. It was, it's not the career per se. It might be, right? But what's really happening underneath is you are not aligned with yourself. You are not pursuing the real things that will bring you joy and pleasure. You have not unleashed your purpose and your preferences, and you have literally sold them out for some form of Faustian bargain that you've made
Mm,
in honor of the external circumstances that will make you look good. And then you end up looking good, but not feeling good. And that's the
mm.
cage.
Right. And I think you can only be somebody that you're not for so long, right? Like we have all these
Yeah.
conditioning that we're told to climb this ladder or take that step or, be this person. And a lot of times it's coming from society or our parents or our friends and not from ourselves. And oftentimes we're taught to rationalize rather than tune into our feelings. And I think what just resonated for me with what you said is, don't ignore your feelings.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is something that many of us have been taught to push down.
Your
Like, don't
feelings
feel,
know. Your
keep going.
feelings know, and your body is always speaking to you. And I know that sounds woo woo, but that is the truth. And especially in discomfort, discomfort can get real comfortable real fast. People can live with really bad things for a long time. But the good news, Holly, vis a vis what you just said, is you can run, but you can't hide. The second these feelings start to bubble up, they're going to get bigger. That voice
Mm,
in your head is going to get louder and louder and louder. And then again, one of two things will happen. Either you
mm,
won't be able to stand it anymore and you will come to the inner journey, to coaching, etc.,
mm,
or you will encounter, as I say at the end of the book, a shitstorm.
mm,
And that is, it's not because you're unlucky. It's literally because you have a breaking point. We all do.
mm. Yeah, I think so. A lot of what we do at Consciously Unbiased is emotional intelligence, right? Like helping people in the workplace understand different dimensions, like self-awareness is a big one.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of what you're talking about too is that inner journey of self-awareness and really getting emotionally intelligent first with yourself so that you can better understand people around you and your place as a leader. And
Yes.
I guess, I mean, there is this trap, you said you were caught in the trap of always wanting to achieve more. Why do you think that we get caught in this trap of always wanting to achieve more? And then I think you kind of said it, but how do we get out of that trap of understanding that there's always going to be
Yeah.
more, and we can't stop, we won't stop striving unless we turn inward?
I'm going to answer your question first in the general sense and then looping it back to leadership and what happens, why the disconnect happens between holistic self-awareness, which is not only the understanding of self, but the understanding of position vis-a-vis another with a different behavioral or communication style. But first, let's talk about what's going on. What's the glitch? Here's the glitch. We are well socialized social animals. That's it. All of us, well, except for psychopaths and sociopaths, which luckily for us, mercifully for us, are only about 1% of society, which is still a lot, but still. And I believe I've dated all of them. No, just kidding. Just kidding. For most of us, we are simply socialized animals. Until the age of around 18, we depend on other people for our livelihood, for our food and well-being. So we learn to adapt and to adjust. We learn to suppress. We learned to live with for a very, very long time. And then that conditioning essentially carries over for a very long time. And essentially, you start to get a message which is measure up or be rejected, which means die. For the brain can't really read things, particularly when you're young. We all remember how insane we were, as survive or die. And that's because it's evolved over centuries not to make us happy, but to just keep us alive, keep the species alive. So when we are like this, we end up in society essentially trying to measure up. And then the cues that we receive are that there are two principal things to pursue in order to not be rejected. And they are, you can put fancy terms on this. I'm just going to call it what it is. Money and status. That's it. If you understand money, status, win, less money, status, no win, loser, you start to see the world in zero-sum way, also known as scarcity. The worldview, the dominant worldview for you is essentially all resources on the planet are finite and we are all in competition for them. This will automatically screw up your self-awareness first, because you will view other people as, unbeknownst to you, in a biased, hidden way, as an enemy, as essentially they either get me or they don't get me, which is not true, simply not true. And then you will see yourself as either able to perfect your strengths and overcome your weaknesses or not. This is very screwy self-awareness, because it's the opposite of what leads to ultimate self-acceptance and then to compassion. The whole point of self-awareness is compassion, which begins with compassion for the self. Now, if you start to really do the work, you're going to very quickly realize that, and also the book, that we just teach you right off the bat that the opposite mindset is much more beneficial to you. And that is the assumption of abundance. Abundance mindset, the opposite of the scarcity mindset, presupposes that resources are not finite. They're always replenishing. For example, Holly, in my lifetime, Justin Bieber appeared out of nowhere. Just when I was done with the work of Madonna, the universe sends me another obsession. How wonderful that is. In other words, the resources are constantly replenishing. If the resources are constantly replenishing, I don't really need to compete. I don't really need to worry too much. They are not against me. There is enough for everyone. Now, a lot of people intellectually understand this, particularly overachievers, but they don't get this emotionally. That's why the work takes time. That's why there are 12 more chapters in the book. That's why there are several more steps to any program, right? But the beginning of the understanding of self-awareness is first understanding the way I see the world is one of my principal blocks. Then you can start to move into leadership. Leadership is recognizing not only your strengths and weaknesses and accepting them so that you may surround yourself with more formidable people and operate for the greater good rather than for the manipulation of status and money. But it's also the understanding of other people as not in competition with you and not problematic for you. I'll give you a great example. My husband and I, Ryan is the coolest person ever, but unfortunately has the exact opposite behavioral style.
Hmm.
So I could say he's insane and he's trying to kill me. He's perfectionist, he's pedantic, he's analytical, he's quiet, he's unaffectionate. I mean, I'm basically describing my cat, Waffles. And it's the same relationship. It could drive me crazy. But instead, I think he's motivated by different things. He sees the world a different way. His
Hmm.
understanding of the world is a different way. It's very useful that his understanding of the world is a different way. And so I first have compassion for him. And second, have a way to relate to him that is particular to him rather than seeing him as problematic for me, which doesn't allow that airflow. It was a long answer, but it was good.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. I mean, we say consciously unbiased, we're all different, we all belong. Like, if we understand that
Yeah.
how we operate is different how others operate, and that's okay because we need all these differences, right, in
Yeah.
order to get things done and build things, and in relationships it helps us better understand ourselves, where we work together, and ways that we could maybe be more open-minded. And something else that you said about going back to our survival instincts is our trainings say that in our brains, social exclusion, our brain registers social exclusion the same way as a physical threat.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so you're saying we may,
Yes.
rationally understand things such as abundance mindset. There's enough for all of us. But in our bodies, in our
Yeah.
physical selves, we may feel a threat, right? We feel a little threatened. And so how do you kind of go back into your body, get out of your head, and also retrain your body to understand that
Yeah.
there is enough to go around, that what you do, Karen, is different from what another coach does, or from what I do. Like, it's all different, and we need these different
Yes.
perspectives. Like, how do you get to that place?
Well, the first thing I'm going to teach you is a mindfulness tactic that I teach in the book that has been a game changer for me. For those who don't recognize the accent, I'm Israeli. And as the stereotype goes, I would land on people like a freaking sumo wrestler, man. Like, you didn't even graze me, and I just smack you down. That's when I was young. Remember when I was young, Holly?
I remember
Adorable,
we
but
met in
kind
our
of,
20s.
I was like being friends with a adorable barracuda. And I've really learned to tone that down. I'm going to teach you how to tone that down, not only for the benefit of everyone else, but also for the benefit of the possibilities in your life. It will make you more successful and happier in every single way. I also
Mm.
want to say before that, there's something that you can proactively and intellectually do, not emotionally do. The proactive and intellectual thing to do is literally, and write this down, never cancel anyone, ever.
Hmm.
Canceling people makes them so aggravated, so hurt that they
Mm.
react in really forceful and usually dangerous ways. I'm
Mm.
saying this not only as a suicide counselor who realized that bullying and shaming people truly makes them very aggressive towards themselves. It's just painful to hear of that.
Mm.
But also just the tech bros in Silicon Valley. You know what they're responding to right now? They're responding to the sense that we made fun of them and
Mm.
we didn't take them seriously and we were mean to them. That's it. The brain literally registers it as a form of ripping you away from the tribe. And that will usually bring more force to you. So, just the first thing to do is do yourself a favor, don't cancel, and try to find the bypass way. And the first thing that I'll offer in order to do that is drop it back into the body by the following mindfulness tool. Now, you have something to say before I
No,
dive in.
yeah, I was just going to say our founder, Ashish Kaushal, says that shame and blame never makes anybody want to change their behavior. If I told my husband, like, shamed him into something, he's not going to hear me, he's not going to listen, and he's definitely not going to change
It's true.
anything. Same thing with me. If he said it to me, it's just human nature.
Yes,
So
it's true.
I,
And it's
I
very, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy trolling. No, I'm just kidding. But people troll me all the time. And I, like, for example, Coach Karen sounds like Coach Karen, and they always have a field day with your Karen.
mm,
And I'm always like, I just want to say I'm Coach Karen, not Coach Karen. That is neither my name, nor are you making the point that you think you're going to make. But
so it's
shame and
Keren.
EREN. Yes,
Yeah.
but essentially what your partner is saying so well is that any form of anger will awaken within the other subconsciously a form of resistance to that anger. Whether you like it or not, it will just never work. So intellectually understand that and start to look for the bypasses around that. I offer several hacks in the book. There's also really, really great ways to do this through Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, which I think is her finest book. Her finest book. So what you can do for within yourself, within your body, is you have to slow down your thought. What's really happening, the impulse to react, is it's all of our Achilles heels. This is the biggest default because we're acting on an assumption. We're allowing it to go into the body, bubble up as anger, even rage, and then we must act. All the urgency starts to fire up. And I like to say, with due respect, if you're not bleeding, it's not urgent. Like nothing is. Literally, I don't care if the plane is taking off. You will not die. You are going to take a breath. And that's where I insert my number one mindfulness tool, the pause principle. Here it is. 3 steps, 17 seconds of your time. The next time a challenge comes your way, and I mean a headline in the New York Times, I mean your spouse is destroying your life by not closing a cabinet appropriately. Your child is upset about something, God forbid, has happened to my cat Waffles. The world will send challenges our way 10 times a day, whether we like it or not, right? The next time a challenge appears, before responding, take 17 seconds. And in those 17 seconds, ask 3 questions. Question number 1, is the problem, or is the way I'm about to reflexively react the bigger problem? Holly, what is the answer to that question? Always.
The way you're going to react.
Always. Always. Like, listen to an Israeli. Always. Number 2, is there any other way to see this? I think this is the question that changed my life, Holly. Is there any other way to see this? There are 15 other ways to see absolutely any situation, which range from I can accept this because, to here's why this is actually proactively good for me, to here's why this is my responsibility as a matter of fact, which will always change the dynamic between you and the problem. And number 3, what's the opportunity here? If you answered number 2, you will see that you will go from there is only one way to resolve this and it's force, to there are 10 ways to resolve this and most of them are okay. This is where we go from scarcity, force against force, to abundance. Power, real power.
So it's a mindset shift, essentially. And there's always an opportunity in almost everything, right? If you can just train your brain to not focus on what's working, but to focus on what could a way around or what could be a benefit of it. So I love those 3 questions. Is that in the Detox Ambition?
Of course, it's in the Ambition Detox, and you can also get access to the Ambition Detox webinar, and it's in the book. The pause principle is my jam. I printed it out initially and I laminated it and I carried it around in my bag. Like, this helped me with everything from my work life to dating. Let me give you an amazing example, Holly. When I met Ryan, we went on 3 dates and then he did the unforgivable. He didn't call or text me for 4 days. On the 4th day, I had brunch with a male friend, and that male friend said to me, without hesitation, he's not into you. Let it go. I feel the rage bubbling inside me. How can this idiot not see that I'm the best thing that ever happened to him? What happened? And then I went, pause principle. Number 1, me freaking out or him not calling? Which is the bigger problem? Me freaking out over somebody I barely know, thank you very much. Number 2, is there any other way to see this? I came up with many ways. For example, he could be dead. He could be a serial killer. That would be great if he didn't call me. He could be one of those weirdos who has a life. Who knew? What's the opportunity? Number 3, chill out, relax, live your life, maximize other opportunities, and see if he comes back. He called me the next day, and he said that the reason that it took him so long to call me back was because I told him that if he didn't read Sapiens, he shouldn't call me again. And he took that literally. And it took him a while to read Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, which is like this big. How adorable is that? Now, listen, if I had preemptively striked, I just texted him going, whatever, dude, I'm over you, which is what so many of us do. We apply force or, go back to your ex or whatever. You immediately ruin the chances, the possibilities of the best thing that ever happened to you coming to you. So I really implore people to use the pause principle because it's really good for you.
Yeah, and I think the point there is that, we have this illusion of control, and
Yeah.
really we don't have any control. The only thing we control is ourselves and our mindset and our reactions, as you just demonstrated through the pause principle. So once we get a handle on that, I feel like other things, like once you learn to let go,
Yes.
things start coming to you. And but wait, before I move on, I do want to say, um, Coach Kieran gave everybody the PDF link to the workbook who's on this broadcast. So our producer Lila will drop it in, and she has a lot of really useful exercises that I suggest you try
Yeah. I
in the
have it
workbook.
here. It's here. You've got it just for you. Enjoy.
And so back to the point about control and learning to let go. A lot of people, I'm switching gears a little bit, but a lot of people in business think the only way to scale is to
Yeah.
try harder, to push harder, to do more. And in the book, you say, actually, the way to scale is to let go and to surrender.
Absolutely.
Can
Absolutely.
you,
And
can you explain why this is?
yeah, yeah.
Why this?
So the first is I want to say, congratulations, Holly. You've stumbled on the main theme of the book. The biggest Achilles heel for all superstars, the biggest is overwork. The obsession with work, the addiction to work, and the belief that only work will set you free. I'm so sorry to quote the Nazis one day after Holocaust Remembrance Day, but this really is an ethos that is far and above the dominant ethos of founders primarily, but of all overachievers of any kind. Is the more I focus, the more I put in the work, the better things will be. This is absolutely not true. I'm going to give you two examples. The first I'll say is when people say to me that marriage is hard work, I really think they've chosen the wrong partner. Marriage is not hard work. And if it is a job, then this is the best job I've ever had in my life. I will keep doing it for free for the rest of my life. Absolutely wrong. The marriage that was hard work was an abusive relationship that I was in before. Thank you very much. So more force, doing it harder is actually only going to make this worse. Don't do it harder. That's actually only the release of force will allow you to actually understand what's wrong and be able to engage with it and to be able to really surrender to the truth of what needs to happen. The second great example is the scaling example. I'm in the rare position of knowing already, because it's been an insane January, that my company is probably going to 5x this year. I thought it was going to 2x this year. Listen, it might end up in like 10% margin, but like it's bananas right now. And I've done the least work for it that I've ever done. And I remember reading why this happens in a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And yes, I will be happy to continue to drop book recommendations here. I love to read, as Holly knows. Love. That's how we met.
Yeah.
In the book, they said that for 2X to happen for your business, you have to really just think about doubling down with enormous force on everything that is working. Basically, you do everything doubly as hard, which is why founders start to literally collapse under the sheer weight of burnout, because their only way to grow is take on double the amount of accounts and clients and double the amount of responsibilities and never go on vacation. And you know what? I'm starting to feel tight in the chest just thinking about it. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's just awful. I feel for them. The other way to do it is to decide to 10X. If you start to think about your company going from $500,000 to $1 million, you understand that this is sheer willpower, tons of force, doubling down on everything, including the marketing, doubling down on the expenditure. You're going to be so aggressively tired at the end of it, but you'll probably have $1 million. Congrats. But if you think about taking yourself from $500,000 to $5 million, what takes a company to $5 million is completely different from what takes a company to $500,000. You're going to be having to think at a completely different level. You will very likely understand very quickly, as I have, that the secret is to actually extricate yourself, to remove yourself rather than to impose yourself. It's actually to get smaller volume than higher volume. Everything changes. Everything changes because you're essentially asking a different question. Do you want to hear what that question is? I just figured this out the other day.
Yes.
I wish it was in the book, but it was an epiphany I just had. Instead of thinking, how can I do this? You're starting to think, how can I let this happen? How can I
Mm,
let this be easy? How can I
mm.
allow this? Completely different. Instead of interference, non interference. And you start to understand that working very hard is actually working against you. And I hope everybody in a top position right now, and by the way, parents of teenagers are really listening to me. How can I get out of the way for this to be the most successful of all my creations?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because in this day and age between, social media and having to post on like 10 different platforms and, running the business and all of the marketing and everything else, I think we do feel like we're not doing enough if we're not
Yeah.
posting, for example, 5 times a day. Um, but the truth is that keeps you from really spending time on being the leader you want to be, right? Because if you're busy doing all these other things, you're not grounding yourself, right? And when you
Yes.
come from a grounded place where you are taking care of yourself, you're able to give more
Mhm.
to your teammates, your colleagues, to your clients. And is that what you're talking about
Yes.
in
Well, you're
terms?
also going to wear yourself out. You're going to kill all the passion. And if you do anything without passion, it will not succeed. And if you don't
Yeah.
believe me, read any of Jim Collins's books. And
Yeah.
that's why the preferences are allowing ourselves to really focus on our purpose or on our zone of genius, which I talk about extensively, as you know, in the book. Probably dedicate the most time to this. If you decide to continue to sell your soul, Faustian bargain, for
Mhm.
preferences to start ringing your bells in the form of material wealth or status for much longer, you will inevitably hit a wall. You will inevitably hit burnout because the passion is not there. Perseverance
Mhm.
alone does not sustain you. And if it does,
Mhm.
by the way, I'm really sorry. That sucks. That's the worst karma ever. But instead, if you really let yourself ride on passion, it's like a loveless marriage. You know what I mean? Like, what's the
Mhm.
point? What is the point? I don't get it. And it's
Well,
exactly
passion
the
is
same with
energy,
passion.
right?
Yes,
Like passion is energy. So if you lose the passion, you're losing the energy, which is really where the magic is and how
yes,
you sustain things, how you achieve things.
yes.
So,
You are
yeah.
effectively living dead.
Yeah. And I mean, how there was a part in the book where you said that overachievers don't pursue happiness. They pursue surrogates for
Yes.
happiness. Why would anybody pursue surrogates for, like, what does that mean? And
Because that's what
what?
we're taught to do. That's what we're taught to do by everybody. Look at my mom. My mom is the nicest person ever. She's adorable. She's well meaning and she genuinely loves me. But when my mom says, I just want you to be happy, here is what she means, Holly. And I know this because I've known my mother for 47 years. Number one, I want you to be married before anything. Number
Mm,
two, I want you to be healthy. Number three, you better have some money. And you better
mm-hmm.
do something that's really safe. That's their first question all the time. How's business? Is it okay? Are you okay? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Have you eaten? Is the
Mm,
second question. And where is Ryan? Is the third
mm,
question. And that's it. That's the message that you're receiving all of your life. How are you not going to absorb this? Again, we're well-meaning socialized creatures. We don't want to be ripped away from the tribe. So we're like, okay, I'm just going to play by the rules and I'm just going to, become a consultant or something and trade my life away and you will love me. But what if you start not loving you? And that's where passion really kicks in. I I know that Scott Galloway, who, as you know, I adore and admire, says,
mm,
"Don't follow your passion. That's for very rare cases." He says you can't afford essentially to follow your passion. You should really do
mm,
something that also pays well. I think you can't afford to not follow your passion.
mm,
I think you can't
mm,
afford to not follow your passion. And there's a sequence to it. Yes, you do need to take care of your preliminary needs first. And I teach people to do that first in coaching and first in the book, right? First, get out of survival. But then once
mm,
you get out of survival, and anybody can, your
mm,
mission should be to live the way you were destined to live, the way with the gifts you were supposed to share with the world.
Yeah, and I really love that. And I think that passion, what we're passionate about, is again a clue of what our
Yeah.
purpose is. And I understand that, you know, we live in the real world, right? And
Yeah.
we have to pay our bills, we have to take
Yeah.
care of our kids, we have to, so I think that there is a way to do it,
Yes.
that you can set yourself up, like maybe you have to, you're pursuing your passion to eventually build you up into being your own business, but
Yeah,
That
like I
doesn't
did.
mean like quit your job. Yeah, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
quit your job today and just like go back to school if you have to
No.
support like
Or burn
your
it all to the
children.
ground and marry
Oh, yeah.
the Timothy Chalamet lookalike, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I think that it's always I mean, I'm a very practical creature. As you know, Holly, when I started this journey, I had $37 in my pocket and I had bills like everybody else and
Mhm.
credit card debt. And the first thing I understood I needed to do was fix this. That's it. So first thing I was going
Mhm.
to do was do this, and I was going to launch what I really wanted to do in tandem. And then I was going to let the universe tell me, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? That's pretty much
Yeah.
it. And that's all you can do.
But you also say, this resonates with me, is, many of us play not to lose rather than to win. And so I guess it's this kind of push-pull between don't let these limits, like don't let all the reasons why you can't do something stop you,
Exactly.
play to win.
You
You
better play to
unpack
win. That's right. And it's essentially just what I mean is get back in the arena, get back in the arena, get back in the arena. Do not stop or tell me something ridiculous like I can't start my business on the side because I don't have time, because that is not true. You have as many hours in the day as Beyonce. You have as many hours in the day as me, and it doesn't matter how much money or help you have. Yes, that does help for sure. But believe me, the only answer to that question, even if you're in a terrible time crunch, is that's
that.
temporary. You will
Mm-hmm.
eventually find the time. And do you know how I know this, Holly?
How?
I know this because the average Gen Zer is spending 7 hours a day on their phone. The average person our age,
Mm.
practically dead, is spending 3 hours a day, perhaps five in some
Wow, that's
aggressive
actually
cases.
low. I would think it was higher.
Yeah. So if we have
Huh.
that much time for the cat videos and whatever, your emails that you have to answer all the time, you have time to start a business. You have time to indulge a hobby. Or in my case, I realized that one of the things I love most in the world is reading. And I kept saying, I don't have time to read,
Yeah.
which is insane. Today, I start my day reading and I end my day reading. And there is literally no reason for me to ever say I don't have time to read. I
And
literally will play myself a chapter in the shower.
yeah, yeah,
Boom,
I
you've
do
got
that
in a
too.
chapter right there.
I listen to my audiobooks in
Yeah,
the shower because I don't want to stop. So wait, what's your favorite book?
oh
Not to put
man,
you on the spot. Besides
that's
Gilded, of course.
impossible to answer. But aside from, of course, well, I mean, it's my book, so it's definitely not my favorite. You know how we are.
Good.
I
We're
would
hard on.
probably say that I have a top three, and that
Mm.
changed my life. The first is Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity. Unusual
Mm.
book, really unusual book, really special. The second is I don't care what you think of the title, it's amazing. It's called Why Your Life Sucks and What You Can Do About It by Alan Cohen. I absolutely
Mm.
love it.
Haven't read that
And
one.
it's really funny, really good. And number three, and really poignant, really on point. And number three is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero,
I
also
love her.
absolutely hilarious. And that
Yeah.
is the book I credit with beginning the big shift for me. I know that the first one I read that was really transformative for me was Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But
Mm.
that particular book was the kick in the pants I needed. And that's, even though Gilded is, I don't think it's very funny. Gilded is a serious
I
book, relatively speaking, in a casual tone.
Yeah, I just
I
love your voice and I love the stories that you insert in there because you can tell that you've read, you can tell that you've reflected, you can tell that you've done this yourself.
Yeah,
And I think that's what makes it so special is, you're not just saying what to do. You're saying what to do because you lived it, you were
yes.
there, you understand, you can empathize, and then you pulled yourself out of it. And that's
Well,
really powerful because that's what resonates, right? It's not
yeah.
just the head, it's the heart. And I think that Gilded really connects with the heart. And I had so many aha moments when reading it.
Well,
So thank
thank you
you
so much
for
for
writing
saying that. Well, thank you for saying it. I believe that all good teachers are people who have actually been through it. And if you ask me what those three books had in common is Martha, Alan, and Jen were clearly speaking as people who have been through it. They knew
that.
what they
Hmm.
were talking about. I don't want to ruin the stories for you, like especially in Martha's case, where you only learn like after 16 chapters where she's been,
Hmm.
and you're like, holy bananas, you are not a normal person at all. And it's that that that's the thing though. Great teachers have suffered. And as Eckhart Tolle says, without suffering, there is no coming to consciousness. I like to think of the years that were horrifying for me, and I'll spare people the story, um, as the price I had to pay for my freedom. And today I can tell you with all my heart, even though it sounds so scary to let go of everything, it is a price I would willingly pay again and again and again. There is no price I wouldn't have paid for this.
Are you saying that's the price you had to pay for your freedom because you had to go down to rock bottom in order to understand what really mattered and how to
Yes.
align yourself with what you were meant to be doing? And if it was easy, you wouldn't have figured it out?
You have to lose everything in at least a metaphorical sense and surrender everything in order to go up again. As Alanis Morissette says so brilliantly in her song,
Mm,
the moment I let go of it was the moment I got more than I could handle. That's in the Thank
mm,
You song. I
mhm,
didn't understand that until, again, unfortunately, I didn't go willingly. I went through trauma. But
mm,
it was only when I stopped resisting and really just went, all right, I guess the fire's taken everything and the cats are dead and the divorce is over and I don't have a job and I don't have any money and I'm over 35 now. All of those things were starting to just, I stopped resisting them. I stopped being sad. I
mm,
just let myself be this new thing, a
mm,
nobody, and
mm,
I became very happy.
mm. That's beautiful. There's a saying that, we can only love other people as much as we love ourselves. And it sounds like your journey was a real journey to self-love and
Yeah,
self-acceptance. And if we go to like the workplace, a lot of what you talk about is leadership. And so we can only lead people as well as we are able to lead
yeah.
ourselves. And it's just two different sides of the same coin. Um, any You did it. Any advice on how we can better love ourselves and better lead ourselves in these times? It's a really, things are changing. It's like back to the office or
Oh, yeah.
remote work or AI coming in, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty. So how can we better lead ourselves and show up better for each other?
There is only one answer, and it's the most important one because it will get you out of your own head. Your own head is the problem. It is what's tripping you up. It's where all the fear is. And as long as you focus on yourself, first of all, you're nowhere near leadership. And secondly, you are not free. The first thing I did to start to really break free and break into a new level of leadership was to serve. The answer is go serve. Martin Luther King said the most important question you will ever ask in this lifetime is, whom do I serve? You must ask, whom may I serve? How may I serve? When you start asking, how may I serve, you're automatically going from scarcity to abundance, because instead of gimme, 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 I want to get mine, you're
Mm-hmm.
literally asking, how may I serve? And you will see the universe will stop taking from you, because that's the response to gimme, gimme. And it will start saying, how may I serve? How may I
Mm-hmm.
serve? Your response, the subconscious response to you, as opposed to that force against force that we talked about at the beginning, will literally be allowing, meeting more allowing. So ask yourself, how may I serve? How may I be of great service here? How may I be of great service to anyone? How can I literally, how can I pick up the dry cleaning more for my partner? Or how can I make an introduction for a friend? Or how can I be a better listener here? All of these tiny little questions are requests to serve rather than requests to receive for the self. And that starts to really rewire everything. And in these uncertain times, instead of freaking out about everything that's
Mm-hmm.
being thrown at you and the need to get under our desk and brace ourselves for the apocalypse, the real question should be, what are we going to do? How may we serve? How may we serve? That'll take you out of all the anxiety.
Wow, that is so powerful because if each one of us asked how we may serve, and you just said it, it may look different, it's for our partners or colleagues or as neighbors and as citizens. If each of us asked how we could serve and then showed up in ways small and big to answer that question and act out that question for ourselves, what a ripple effect
Yeah, I
that
know.
would
I
have.
hear so many people, for example, talking constantly about suicide statistics, probably part of my job and my
Yeah.
domain. But I always am like, so why aren't you volunteering?
Yeah.
What are
Can
you
you
doing?
share that? Can you share that
Crisis
in,
text
in
line.
the
Crisis text line is the biggest hotline in the United States. There are over 10,000 volunteers. It's an incredible organization. If you're called to serve in that way, then it's available to you. They'll train you for 10 weeks. And then, like me, you're going to be one of those people who at 4 o'clock in the morning is there to help other people. In other words,
Mm,
if it really frustrates you, if it hurts your heart, show up to serve. You will be doing yourself a greater honor and an honor to society than the
mhm.
disservice that you do to yourself by just ruminating or accepting suffering.
Right. Yeah. Staying in our own heads is not going to solve anything. And the
No.
thing is you really live this. Like, can you share the example in the book if you feel comfortable about when
Of
you were
course.
18 and on the bus and you met that woman?
Yes. Yes. Well, trigger warning, I should have said. We're talking about suicide. That is triggering for a lot of people. I think it should be normalized. It's much more common than you think. But the first time I understood that this was something interesting was I wasn't on a bus. I couldn't get a bus home from the army, so I took a private car
You were in
situation
Israel?
in Israel. I was in the army. I was a soldier,
Yep.
and I was sitting next to a woman who was crying, and I could literally see over her shoulder she was writing a note. Back in the day, there were no cell phones. Ah, the
Mm,
90s, magical time. So I saw that she's writing a note, and it's a suicide note. She's literally saying goodbye, and I'm very sorry, and I have to go. And this is a much older woman than me. She must have been like what my age is now. And
mm,
I, because I am, as you know, a chatty McChatterbox, went, "Hi, you okay? Do you want to talk? What happened to you?" And she
mm,
started to tell me that her son had died and she just didn't want to go on.
mm,
I remember. And I said, "Well, I don't want you to go home like this. If it's okay with you, I'd like to keep talking to you." And she was like, I think, taken by the very chatty soldier. And also in Israel, we have great respect for soldiers. She wasn't going to dismiss me anyway. She was going to, thank me for the service and be very nice to me and be respectful. Either way,
mm.
it was very useful to be in uniform that day. And then I said, "Listen, I'm going to the movies later with my friend. Do you want to come with us?" An 18-year-old pipsqueak. And I'm like, "Okay, listen, I'm going to be waiting for your call. So you tell me. I'll be waiting for your call, okay?" She showed up. She, I think, got freaked out that somebody was going to check on her, but I also think she was moved
Mm,
by that. That's when I started to understand that by talking people through things, you can get them to the other side. I'm 18 years old and I figured this out. I volunteered then in the Army's
mm,
crisis hotline because, of course, the Army has a crisis hotline. And I realized I was pretty good at it. I'm very, very good at talking. I never get bored and I'm always happy to get you to the other side. And now that I'm quite trained at it, I can do a 40-minute conversation and get a lot of people to the other side. Not everybody, unfortunately, but a lot of
mm,
people to the other side. That when I was going through my crisis, I had a remembrance of that. I remembered that. I hadn't done that for years because, thanks to the devil wears Prada in society, I was much more interested in external success for a long time and really disconnected from my true nature, which is, I guess, to be a big pussycat. And that's when I remembered, you like doing this and you don't have any money anyway, you might as well volunteer. And that was it. That changed my life. That decision to go back to suicide counseling changed my life.
mm. So you were in crisis and you literally went back to how you could serve, how
Yes,
you, Karen, could serve. And that ended up saving you. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful story for us all that when we feel like we don't have control, when we're worried, when we're nervous, when we're in our own heads, go back to that question, how can I serve?
yes,
Um, and use it in all areas of your life.
yes. Please do not attempt this during grief. I would like to caution anybody out there. If you've just
Hmm.
lost
Yeah.
anybody that you truly love, oh my God, especially a child, you are going to have to go through the grief process. Period. The end. But if you want to get out of grief,
Mm.
that's your way out.
Well, before we close, I wanted to address one more thing in the book that I was hoping you could tell me about. Can you describe what authentic power is? Because
Yeah.
right now I'm just really obsessed with this idea of like our personal agency, our personal power. How do you define authentic power and what is it?
Authentic power is the power of vulnerability and self-compassion. It is the knowing that there is a part of yourself that can never be hurt and therefore never exerts force. Authentic power is freedom too. Inauthentic power or force is freedom from. Completely different. Completely different. One is a rejection of reality and a force against reality. You see it all the time with the Machiavellians, right? They're all about competition. You winning means destroying another. Authentic power is win-win or above that, which is literally, I am willing to let go. I am willing to relax. I am willing to let you win as well. I want you to win as well. Very, very different energy, collaborative energy. Authentic power really feels good in the body. I mean, anybody can just check themselves about how they feel as I was saying those words. Me win, you lose. I'm telling you, my chest is getting tight again. But
Yeah.
you win, I win. Love you. Have a great life. Oh, man, that feels so good.
What's an example of a leader that you think does a good job of showing
Today,
power?
you've got to be joking.
Is there anybody?
I'd have to think about that. I'm the only person who
Yeah.
comes to mind is Yvonne Chenard, who just stepped away from Patagonia, who walked away from his entire fortune, who
Yes.
really, like by
Good
all
example.
accounts, led by example and led with love and led with service, a true service to the people who worked with him, a true mindset that was flexible and ready to achieve with people rather than to achieve over people or because thanks to people, right? That's the only leader that comes to mind. I mean, you're talking to somebody who's, you know, again, I immediately think of Bibi and Trump when you say that. And I'm like, yuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Patagonia is a really good example. I don't know why I didn't think of him. I mean, before we close too, is there one, we like to talk about small action steps for change that we call micro progressions. And this has been such a powerful conversation. I want people to walk away with, they've already walked away with so many action steps, but what is one small action step that people can do in the workplace to help create this like real sense of belonging for everybody?
And the nicest thing you can do is be easy on yourself. You'll be easier on everybody else. If you can be nice to yourself, you can be compassionate to yourself when you have, I don't know, God forbid, a typo in a newsletter.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking, my God, I deserve to die, you think, it's okay. These things happen. You're going to be a better leader because you will literally accept other people's having a typo in a newsletter, which I'm sorry to say does happen even to very smart, talented people like me.
Yeah,
you will not freak out. You will literally say what's going on. Now, I'm not saying that you should allow this to go on forever. You do know the difference, right? But if you are compassionate towards yourself, you will maintain high standards, but not perfectionist standards or punishing standards. And you will therefore be able to do the same for other people. And a compassionate workplace is a happy workplace.
Yes, that's so true. Learn from your mistakes, but have compassion for yourself, and then you'll have compassion for others. Well, I have loved this conversation. Thank you so, so much for your work, for your book, for sharing your stories and using your voice to help really unlock so many insights for people. And I'm really going to walk away remembering this question of how can I serve whenever I start getting stuck in my head. Where can listeners go to find out more about you?
Thank you so much. You can find out more on KarenEldad.com. Again, KEREN Eldad.com. And the book is available wherever books are sold. I'm happy to tell you that there are many alternatives to Amazon, y'all. So be cool. Be cool. And then there's, of course, Instagram, which other than LinkedIn is my favorite because people lie a lot less. I think
They lie.
they lie less on Instagram. It's at Coach Karen, again, with 2 E's. So please join the community. I'm here for you. And that Ambition Detox workbook also includes a free clarity call or coaching call for anybody who needs it. I'm ready.
Thank you, Karen. So good to see you again.
Thank you, Holly. Love you. Thank you.
I love you.